Welcome to my video on how our garden has been transformed over the years. If you're new here, we have dreams to do our own self-build in the next 5 years, and part of that plan is to make sure that our house is valued as high as possible when we do end up selling it. And part of that is making sure our garden is in tip-top shape. Let's face it, new build gardens can be really tricky, and although you get a lovely blank canvas to start with, it can be quite hard to navigate some of the awkward shapes and small spaces that you're left with. So carry on watching to find out how much we ended up spending and how we got to this stage with our beautiful garden. Welcome to my video on our new build garden. So I wanted to do this video because I don't think there's that many videos out there on kind of a mix of DIY garden transformation and getting an actual professional in to not only design your garden but also implement the work. So welcome to the video. And just to give you a bit of background, Dave and I moved into this new build home back in December 2019. I'll put some footage here on what the garden actually looked like when we moved in. We were quite lucky because I know that some new build providers don't actually put any lawn down or anything. We actually had lawn, and you'll probably see this in the footage, but the shape of the garden was really strange as well. We were kind of on a weird kind of corner angle, and which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. We got a bit more, I would say, land than some other people on the street. So yeah, this is basically a blank canvas that we had to work with. Obviously, when we moved in December 2019, it was pretty much COVID lockdown 3 months in. So we spent a lot of time in our garden. And I think that is a key thing, is that spend time in your garden, figure out where you kind of spend most of your time, and also the kind of direction of sun throughout the day. So we kind of figured that out pretty much within the first kind of 6 months. But our garden was basically a blank canvas for a long time. I think it was only spring 2021 when we started to do work on it, and there was essentially 2 stages to achieve what we've achieved now. Stage 1 was in spring 2021. So we knew very much straight away that because our garden was a very awkward shape, we needed an expert to come in. So we got someone called Poison Ivy Design. She was I think she was quite new to the garden design business, so her fees weren't crazy expensive. So we paid £500 for her to come in, measure up our garden, take all the kind of soil, pH levels, direction of sun, all of that jazz, to basically plan out our garden. And this was the first plan that she came up with. At the time, we had, I think we didn't have that much money really to work on it. I think from memory, excluding like garden furniture, we had about £5,000 to play with. And that isn't that much money when you want to expand hard landscaping. And when I say hard landscaping, I mean patio. So usually in new build gardens, the patio is very small, and they use quite cheap tiles. So they're not like the most nicest looking tiles, and it's very awkward shape sometimes as well. So long story short, we had £5,000. We needed to do much of the work ourselves for that £5,000 to stretch. So of this garden design, we actually only ended up implementing half of the garden design, so the section closest to the house. We also didn't follow her plan for the weird corner triangle bit. So initially she said, why don't you do raised beds because you can grow vegetables there. We liked the idea, but at the time there were so many trees that that section didn't get that much sun. So yeah, we ended up actually just removing the turf from that area and putting gravel down. just to kind of reduce the amount of grass that we had, because it was kind of like a useless space, and we kind of made it into a fire pit area, but we rarely used it. So all in all, stage one was expanding our existing patio. So that actually cost £1,000 for labour and about another 1,000 to replace the stones, the patio stones. The benefit was, now I don't know how legitimate this recommendation was, but because it's a new build, the builder that came in, or landscaper, sorry, that came in to do our patio, he basically said it's a pretty good solid base. So all I need to do is take up the stone and I can just lay on top of that, lay the new slabs on top of that. Obviously he had to do the usual kind of digging, hardcore, etc. for the extra section that we asked him to do as well. So it was about 2.5-ish from memory to do the main patio, but the stepping stones and the barbecue area we actually did ourselves. So we hired a turf cutter and a whacker plate. So we basically did it all by hand. We dug a lot of the basically, if you've never done a patio before, you have to dig quite a big way down basically, and that was hard work. However, I would say that it was doable. I'm not sure if I would do it again, but if it was as small of an area that as we did, so I think we have about 4 stepping stones and a 3x4 area for the barbecue area, I would do it again because it saved so much money. And again, the cost for the actual patio stones was included in that £1,100 that I mentioned. The whacker plate and the turf cutter were like £100, I think, for the time that we hired it for. I think the biggest cost was actually a skip. So all of that we did ourselves. We did the barbecue area and the stepping stones ourselves. We also did all the planting and borders ourselves. So some of it was trial and error, some died, some didn't. So that was stage one. And this is what the garden looked like once we had finished that bit. We basically did it in a rush because we had Milo. So we got a puppy in July 2021, and we wanted the garden to be safe for him, but also a place where he can kind of go and sniff around different flowers and stuff. So all the plants were dog friendly and we were happy with it. As time went on, so from kind of when we finished it in July 2021 up until December 2024, so that is not that long ago, we were unhappy with the way that our garden was, because the area, the corner triangle bit, was unused. There was basically nothing there. We rarely went there. The grass had basically got all boggy and just horrible, and that side of the garden wasn't working for us. And we also needed more space. So we came to the decision in 2024 to build a garden office in that unused triangular space. And we knew that after it was built, we needed to landscape the garden again just for that section. So the second part of the garden design was the garden office and the landscaping, the area around the garden office. And that has cost us obviously a lot of money. The garden office was around 25k. We got a garden designer again, but we went for a different garden designer because we wanted a different look and feel. So back in 2021, the garden designer that we went with actually specialised in quite like cottagey gardens. So we went with a garden designer that was more kind of contemporary design, and he was a little bit more expensive, but not as expensive as I thought, because he only actually designed part of our garden. It wasn't a full garden design. So the garden design costed us about £150. And he then also quoted us for the work. So to summarise what we had done, we extended our existing patio even more because we actually found that the garden furniture that we had didn't actually fit quite nicely on our patio. We needed it a bit bigger. So he worked on extending that with leftover tiles that we had from 2021. So we didn't actually have to pay that much to top up our patio, which was quite nice. So it was labour cost for the extending our patio. He also added stepping stones to the garden office. So the garden office, as part of the package, they built the garden office, but also a decking area. So we needed stepping stones to get onto the decking area. So he quoted for that. And then the rest of the quoting was for planting and returfing. So I'll show you the garden plan that he did for us. Hopefully it's clear kind of what was new and what isn't. Overall, we have spent a lot of money on the garden. But I think what I wanted you guys to take away is that I think getting your garden designed professionally saves you a lot of money in the long run. I wish we had done the work all in one go. So I think it's quite natural actually to have it done in stages. But I would say personally, the money spent on the garden design is money worth spent. And then at that stage, you can then decide how much you want to do yourself and how much you want to get someone in to do. We didn't do any of the work ourselves in the second round. That was a personal choice. We also found that we aren't experts in plants, and you can't just put a plant in that you like the look of, because it needs to be in the right environment based on the sun, based on soil, and that's all stuff that we just didn't have time to do. Obviously, if you are a keen gardener and you know your stuff, then definitely I think the planting is probably what you would do yourself. I'm glad we tried doing the patio ourselves in the first stage of the design, because we now know what it takes and what the level of work is to do yourself. Like I said, if it was a small area, I'd probably do it again. But for what the second designer guy suggested, I think it was just easier for him to do. So all in all, stage one costed us around 5k minus garden furniture, because we obviously spent some money on garden furniture. The second phase, excluding the garden office, so the garden office and the decking included, was around 25. But the second stage of the garden design was £650, and the actual work, including the plants, including slabs for the stepping stones, that cost all in all about £4,400. So we've spent about 10k over the years in designing our garden, and about 25k adding a room out there as well. So I think the value added to this property is either the same or a little bit more. Obviously, we don't know what it is exactly until we get an actual official quote, but I am pretty confident to say that our garden's probably one of the nicest on the road and easy to maintain as well. Hopefully you found that information useful. We absolutely love our garden. We have so many different plants, but I would say it's a very easy to look after garden. And yeah, highly recommend getting a garden designer if you haven't. And hopefully this video also inspires you, if you have a new build garden, that you don't have to just stick with a kind of bog standard lawn and patio only. You can branch out and, you know, segment your garden up a little bit, you know, because small gardens, I think the more you kind of have different areas, the bigger it feels. And I would say the garden definitely does feel bigger than it did when we first moved in. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe, because I'll be doing more kind of home related videos as we try and add as much value to our home as possible, with the eventual goal of doing a self-build. So thanks for watching. Comment down below if you have any other questions on the designers we used, any of the patio designs, etc., comment down below and I'll do my best to get around to answering. Thanks for watching.